Hi, I'm Dan, and this is the start to finish tutorial series for the High Grade NZ666 Kshatriya. In this series, I'm going to go through all the various steps, tips, and techniques that I will use to build, modify, detail, and paint this kit. This series will be broken up across several videos. I recommend that you watch the videos in numerical order. I hope that this tutorial series provides you with an insight into how I build and paint my model kits. If you have any questions about the various tips, tricks, or techniques that I've demonstrated, then please leave a comment in the corresponding video. This video series was made possible due to the generous support of my patrons over on patreon.com. The kit featured in this video was also selected by my patrons. If you'd like to see more of these videos in the future, or if you'd like to help select kits for future start to finish series, then please consider supporting me on Patreon. You can help out for as little as $1 a month, and I owe a big thank you to all of my patrons for their ongoing support. Thanks, guys. If you're completely new to Gundam, don't worry, you don't need to be able to read Japanese to put a model together. In fact, if you can put a Lego set together, you can probably handle a Gundam model. The steps in the manual are laid out numerically, and parts are referenced by a combination of their part runner, the thing that all the parts come bolted onto, and the part number. For example, if we're going to need part A1, go ahead and grab the runner labeled A, and then find the part number 1. We will be using many different tools in this section of the video. If a tool is required for a step, then a list will appear at the beginning of that step. Links are in the description for where you can find these tools. I start by using my nippers to cut the material connecting the part to the runner. Some high-end nippers, such as God hands, will allow you to cut much closer to the part, but with most nippers you should leave 1 to 2 millimeters of connecting material. Proceed to cut all of the connections. Once the part has been removed from the runner, we can use our nippers to cut the nub down further. Try to leave some material on the part. Once the part is free from the runner, I shave down the remaining material, or nubs, using my design knife. Please exercise caution and common sense when using your hobby knife. Never cut towards your hands or into the part, and never force your knife and replace the blades as soon as they become dull. Now that all the nubs have been cut down, we can sand the area smooth. Using several grits of sandpaper, I'll sand from my coarsest grit to the finest. Generally, I'll start around 400 grit and then move up to 800 before finishing around 1000 or 1200. The sanded surface should be smooth and consistent. Adequate preparation is the key to a smooth finish later on. This process is called wet sanding. Wet sanding works by immersing your sandpaper or abrasives in water. You wouldn't want to do this with a metal file, but sandpaper will be fine. Simply soak your sandpaper for a few minutes before you start, and periodically dunk your sandpaper as you sand. The main reason I wet sand is to reduce the amount of dust created by the sanding process. But wet sanding also provides a smoother sanding surface, and it prolongs the life of your abrasives. If you've been building for a while but haven't tried wet sanding, I strongly recommend you give it a try. Sanding round things requires a different technique than sanding flat things. If you sand on a single flat plane, you'll end up with a flat spot on your round part. Instead, you must sand using a rounded motion like this. Do you see this slightly raised line running down the middle of this part? This is called flash. This can happen when a tiny amount of plastic works its way between the two halves of the mold. It's unsightly, so let's clean it up. I recommend using a coarse grit of sandpaper to start, and then polishing with finer grades. Sometimes, as parts are formed in a mold, they aren't formed perfectly. This is typically most visible on large or flat parts, or in parts with a peg on the other side. And here's how I clean up these mold errors. For this technique, we're going to need a basic black marker, like this Sharpie. Go ahead and color in the sink marks. They're most easily visible under the line. The black marker will help you visualize the location of these marks and their depth relative to the surrounding plastic. Allow the marker to dry for a few seconds. Then, grab a coarse grit of sandpaper and sand the part until the marks disappear. Follow that up with finer grades of sandpaper. Here's a quick tip to make it easier to take pieces apart. To do this, all you'll need to do is to cut the peg down. The technique that I prefer is to start at the tip of the peg and cut at a roughly 45-degree angle down the peg. This typically provides enough material to secure the part, but allows you to separate it more easily. In the next video, we're going to cover the modifications I made to this kit. See you then!